Today I'm testing the raw image quality on the iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max, and I'm comparing it to the 12 Pro. This year the Pro and the Pro Max both share the exact same camera system, and of course they both get all these fancy computational updates like cinematic mode and HDR4, and I'm sure there's some other stuff as well. But on this channel I'm far more interested in the improvements to the good old-fashioned image sensor and lens, because these are what directly affect the raw image quality. A lot of people always ask me which app I'm using, and today I'm using the Reflex app. And I'm literally just walking around with the two phones side by side, trying to take the same composition, keeping the settings the same and things like that for a fair comparison. And in this situation, with the lighting really uniform, it's quite overcast with a little bit of blue sky, I'm not expecting any difference whatsoever from either of the three cameras on either phone. After shooting all morning and all afternoon, it turns out there is a very slight difference between the two devices in daytime situations. Let's start with the wide camera. The 13 Pro Max's has a larger sensor and a larger pixel pitch of 1.9 microns compared to the 12 Pro's 1.4 microns. Pixel pitch refers to the distance between the center of adjacent pixels. It basically means the pixels are bigger, which means they'll gather more light more efficiently. Plus, the lens is slightly wider too at f1.5 compared to f1.6. And all of these light gathering improvements have resulted in the 13 Pro Max's RAW files being ever so slightly less noisy in daytime situations. But as the examples demonstrate, it's extremely subtle and only really discernible if you zoom in a lot. You'll see the biggest improvements in continuously smooth textures like blue skies, which I appreciate, but in densely textured photos you probably won't be able to see much difference, if any at all. Moving on to the ultra wide, and while the sensors are the same size with the same 1 micron pixel pitch, the 13 Pro Max's has a much larger f1.8 aperture compared to the 12 Pro's f2.4, resulting in a very slight improvement to the overall frame. But the biggest difference is in the corners. The 12 Pro's corners are full of chromatic noise, whereas the 13 Pro Max's are a lot cleaner, which is great. And I think the ultra wide is finally becoming a viable option ever since iOS 15, when you could finally shoot in traditional Bayer RAW instead of just Pro RAW and some processed files. Having seen these results from these tests, I'm really impressed, and I'll definitely break it out more often. The tables turn, however, with the Telephoto. The sensors are the same size, but the 13 Pro Max now has a 3x zoom compared to the 12 Pro's 2x zoom, and the aperture has shrunk from f2 to f2.8, resulting in images being approximately 1 stop darker at the same settings. And I'd like to explain very quickly why the longer focal length has led to a smaller f-number. A lens's f-number is its focal length divided by its entrance pupil diameter. The 13 Pro Max's telephoto lens has a focal length of 9mm and an entrance pupil diameter of 3.2mm, which gives us an f-number of 2.8. So in order to increase the 13 Pro Max's f-number to f2, like on the 12 Pro, we can calculate that it'd need an entrance pupil of 4.5mm, which is 40% bigger than it is now. But even though the f numbers are different, the actual physical sizes of the apertures are probably the same, but the longer focal length on the 13 Pro Max has less light gathering efficiency, hence the darker images. They're also not as clean, but again, in most cases you have to pixel peep to see it. And if you shoot and edit on your phone, I highly doubt you'll even notice. I've been looking at all of these photos on a 32-inch UHD display, and I think they all look great. So in daylight, the differences between the raw quality of the two generations of Pro devices are extremely comparable and sometimes completely negligible. But in the absence of light, everything I've just said is exaggerated, and it gets even more exaggerated the lower the light gets. Let's just take a second to appreciate the quality of these iPhone RAW files. You want to edit? You go ahead and edit, my friend. There's tons of data to push and pull and play around with. And if you're looking at these devices and you're thinking, great, I'm going to save some money and I'm going to get last year's device. I'm going to get the 12 Pro. To be honest, I don't blame you. But first, have a look at this. You don't even have to pixel peep. The difference is right there in black and white. Or should I say in signal to noise ratio. That's what getting ratioed means, right? Did you just make a photography joke, Dave? I think you did. The 13 Pro Max is leaps ahead of the 12 Pro here, especially in those ultra wide corners. But you know what's surprising? Let me bring in my humble iPhone XR. This was my last day of shooting with the XR before I sent it off as part of a trade-in, bless it. And it actually looks less noisy compared to the 12 Pro, but it's not really. What happened is the 12 Pro's wide lens has an f1.6 aperture, whereas the XR has a 1.8 aperture. So at the same settings, the 12 Pro's image is brighter, but it's just brightened the noise. If I bring the exposure down, you can see the 12 Pro's image is overall a higher quality, but not by that much. Very well played, iPhone XR. I'm gonna miss you. You served me really well. And I mean, just look at that being compared to the iPhone 12 Pro in low light, no less. In daytime, again, I imagine the sensors are the same actually. They have the same pixel pitch, same size sensor. All the evidence points to the sensors on those two devices being the same. So do not underestimate the iPhone XR. Just getting back to these low light images though, if you do want to go out and shoot handheld with your iPhone in RAW at night, just do yourself a favor and stack your photos. If you're not sure what it is, I made a full tutorial on it. It's probably around here somewhere on a little card. Just click it. It's half an hour long. It'll tell you how to get perfect noise reduction on any device, even your iPhone. So are you surprised by the results? Did you expect the devices to be so evenly matched in the daytime? I know I did. I didn't expect any difference whatsoever, but there was. So there you go. Enough to justify the 13 Pro Max. I know there's more to the camera systems than just pure raw image quality to consider when you want to decide between the two devices, but for me, it's the most important thing. Hence, this is my very first of many iPhone 13 Pro Max videos devices. Here I've got a lovely case for it. I hated making this video, by the way, because I made it and I didn't have a case for the 13 Pro Max, and it has these stainless steel bands, and you put your fingers on it once and it just ruins it. It looks like it's 10 years old in an instant. I hate it. So yeah, if that could go away next year, that'd be great. So I've got a nice case for it now. It's going to be with me, and yeah. So let me know what 13 Pro Max videos do you want to see, because they're going to be coming thick and fast. I'm like a month behind on this stuff, so I'm playing catch up. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Take care, stay curious, and back around. A lot of people always ask me which app I'm using, so today I'll show you. I'm using, thank you dog, shut up dog, of the aperture is probably the same size as last year, but the darker images are a result of the longer focal length hovering. You were doing so well, Dave.